Ja. Meine Damen und Herren,
ladies and gentlemen, one of my privileges in my job with journalism is that you have a whole overview of all errors you make, or your prognosis was wrong, and you even have it with your name on it, and you start to write some backdrops on politicians, and sometimes they come back.
I had already written 2001 that the internet had become merely a decoration that will not do anything anymore, that certain things aren't possible because the code is simply a bit too complicated, and that based on my research, the euro crisis already should have happened, and so badly that it distinguishes between before and after. I'm actually quite happy not to have been right, but one of the most important mistakes I've made is probably the choice of my job, a journalist. I think it started when around age 16 in school. I had to write 3 essays, and I did not get them back from the teacher, but from the headmaster, who said, well, they're completely disgusting, they're politically dangerous. And he told me to change my life, because otherwise I would not become anything. And I don't even remember anymore what I have answered him, but I remember this weird feeling of happiness that I had at that time, that for the first time somebody deemed me dangerous in those days. So during the dark time of puberty, there was far, far away this door, some light, my possible future job. So because of this headmaster, I believed in those times that the word and not numbers that can change the world. The word can excite people, and it makes headmasters angry and can make the word explode. Actually, it was completely wrong, and I did not know that there was such a thing as the economy until I was 33. Afterwards, at some point, I learned that without understanding the economy, I understood that you can't understand the world without understanding the economy. And even today, as an economic journalist, I am scared with every number I write down. But at the age of 19, when my father told me I should do a business MBA, well, I did not even understand him. I did not even understand that this could be something proper. I was actually for punk, although I did not look that way. It was all within my heart. I thought the Switzerland needed to be bombed, and I thought that bankers were people who had like this boring life and a big house, good money. I did not think this was an option for me. Again, I was wrong. The punks had some nice music and organized a nice scene within Zurich, but the bankers almost made the world financial system explode, and they actually got away with this. So I always feel some kind of small envy. These people, these bankers, actually managed to do what I always wanted to do when I was young in those times. So they did not only completely destroy the world financial system, but they almost destroyed the concept of civility and of citizenship in Switzerland. People are disoriented, and it's still influenced by George Bernard Shaw's you don't have a heart. Who's still a communist with 40 doesn't have a mind. Anyways, you should be on top of your life, you should think. And my family has grown, my money has grown, the zone around the hips has grown. You should actually be more like a citizen, and that didn't really happen. And some things couldn't happen to me. And if you look closer to citizenship and with the financial system, you can see how much mistakes were made.
and so many things aren't sure, and how weird the mass is.
The
bankers speculate with other people's money, and if you have a certain position in communities, you don't really pay for your own mistakes, but other people. And punk still isn't damaged, but punk is also. But the only protest is to do good work, and that's what other people don't achieve. And it's still well done, but the problem in my job of journalism is that it's not really sure what good work actually is, what well done actually means. During centuries, journalists were pretty sure about that news plus a little bit of opinion and some entertainment would be good, but now we find out that we were wrong. In reality, we don't sell news, but we sell habits, and you actually feel wrong without coffee, without newspapers, without a cigarette. And newspapers' strategies was okay. It was clear. Habits are still pretty easy to handle, and if you don't make mistakes, you don't really get angry people on you, and you can't really disappoint people, and you still have your people getting a newspaper. The grey parts of the newspaper, that's just not any grey, it's a specially chosen grey mixed with different colors. It's an industry product. But nowadays these habits are gone, and young people don't have it anymore. As a journalist, you're kind of like an old musician that just handles people. And our main opinion, like news, they are just so inflationary that you don't really have a serious product anymore. The new market in the internet, you really have a huge, many people contesting with you. There are blogs. There are different pieces of writing, as well as social media. You actually contest with games. You contest with the best that entertainment industry can offer you. There was a measurement in the USA that people spend 33% of their lives with Facebook, 3% with news aggregators like CNN, BuzzFeed and Huffington Post, and classical media like newspapers at least get 1%. We went from the king of the morning to the mice of the morning that just get the little breadcrumbs laying around. You can feel that you don't have the power anymore. PR is getting a lot more. A little more special, and you can. The readers are becoming more self-assured. You can see that if you look at the online comments. The only people who only wish us death even more, who want to kill us even more than our readers, are the people who are actually doing the books for ourselves in our own publishing houses. So the high point from which we've been talking has been taken away from us, and from a system of almost church-like situation where we're talking to an audience that is listening, we've been brought back to the old Athens, where we're on the marketplace, where there's people all around us, there's animals all around us, people selling things, and that's where we have our small stall. And that is actually the comfortable part for us as a journalist. The terrible part is that our routines are actually producing bullshit right now. They produce the industrial grey. So
A newspaper is a big machine made of routines. Hundreds of decisions are made every day, and they're being taken almost automatically. So this newspaper is being built newly every single day. So you could probably shoot 20 journalists within a newspaper, and it would continue building itself, without anyone actually noticing. Newspapers are mainly made up of routines because they have to offer all this stuff every day. So now we have the problem that the stuff is not being bought anymore because the audience has become more demanding and less faithful. So not being disappointed does not count anymore in the modern media market. No one recommends an article because he wasn't upset about it. So the aim of journalism has changed fundamentally. Analysis or comments are not only sold with non-disappointment anymore, but simply with passion. Without anyone being really excited about something, nobody is actually reading a newspaper, not to mention getting it every day. Buying the same newspaper every day is not something normal anymore, it's an exception. So if a newspaper wants to survive, it needs to become the personal thing for a person, something like a club he wants to belong to. I think there are three main directions if we want to do this. The first is if the routines don't work anymore, then we can check that maybe if we can't change these routines completely. One of the main things in journalism of today is the complete newness of something that is more than any other newspapers have. But now, 5 minutes later, it'll be on all the websites of other newspapers. So what if we do it completely differently and say, not the product is the star, the actual product is the story. So after all these stories about surveillance, we could maybe be the ones who do the roundup and to write what actually happened. Because in the end, the ones who are lost will be the first ones. And not news are what people want to hear, but stories. Secondly, we've always said that what we're selling are the facts. But facts are dirt, like any other resource. These facts need to be pure. But this is something newspapers have not paid attention to, and one aspect is style. So, an old dogma within newspapers is that a journalist should technically know everything, or at least pretend to. That's another point where we're completely wrong. Something Oscar Wilde said in the past, that people like to be bored because they believe that being bored is something rich people do. And so being without faults is not competence, but it means that people who always talk without fault, well, you actually flee these people. We should be more about honesty, and it's more about admitting that you have made mistakes when you make them, and that sometimes you might not know something. So you should bring the serious stuff seriously, and that's also a dogma which you know, in the beginning it's highly likely to be difficult, but complex topics like surveillance, like the financial crisis, euro crisis, the economy and stuff like that, it's not really easy to do, and political journalists should be entertainers. To make good articles, and we actually put in professionals with academic records into the jobs, and the result is that we actually lose that a lot of resources look like Africa before the apartheid, and we would need people that have something to win, instead of just having people that just to be like they are. And if news isn't our stuff like anymore,
more. The general thinking in the newspapers is that news aren't really the product. We need opinions, and we usually do these in the comment areas of the news sites, and this is completely wrong in my opinion. Opinions are growing like hair, and if you, for example, if you have opinion on China on transvestites without having really knowledge about it, opinion is really cheap stuff, and the more expensive variant of the opinion is.
Unterhaltungsware, an Musik, an Games, an Büchern fesselt.
The thing is, what is actually interesting about entertainment, about music and games, is not the actual content, but the opinion behind this that we want to copy. So when we talk about opinion, there are three things we need. One thing is bravery. So the moment where you fall in love with journalism or newspaper is always a moment of bravery. It can be a brave research, for example, Watergate, or when you want to become journalist when you see a certain movie. It can be a brave research, like what Glenn Greenwald did for The Guardian, where you have the feeling these guys are actually doing something. It can be a brave thought, where you think, how can somebody think this? So the actual function of this brave thought is freedom. It can be a brave sentence, the brave way of saying something. For example, he was as indistinguishable as a scorpion on a cake. So the journalist is a representative. He's an extension of the reader. And this reader is spending the day working. And the journalist is the person who can widen the gaze of this reader. Then there is honesty. An actual professional researches in both directions, to the outside, looking for the facts, and within, to look within his heart what these facts mean. That is more difficult and often ridiculously difficult to do the second type of research. But communication is something really easy. Say what you think, say what you've seen, and people will listen to you. Another part of this honesty is to admit mistakes, and then niceness. Right now, the speed is increasing on all of these online pages, and there are less and less people who are working on this. So, journalists, for example, we have small jokes, stupid jokes by politicians. People who are cheating the state out of money. Journalists work on these small scandals and are then instead not doing the big scandals anymore, where big companies are paying their taxes in other countries or not paying any taxes at all. These are topics that demand more time and are being treated less. So there's a bad mood that is going through all the newspapers because we started listening to the readers. And this whole...
So journalists think that the product actually is the embarrassment, and I don't think it's a political problem because everything, the big and the small, just ends up in a big mass of unconsciousness. And the product... that's why we just need a new product line, and that should be niceness and just being calmed, and you have to be generous, and you should offer alternatives. The problem of today's world is that many people just tell you don't really have alternatives, and you should actually research alternatives, and you shouldn't just say what's going wrong, but also what you can do better. And finally, a newspaper just deals with sensations. And sensations are just not scandals or records, but they are also these moments of amazing stuff and the elegance of the world. And this belongs to life, and this belongs to newspapers. Thirdly, it needs a debate in newspaper offices. You need new routines. And this is a process. New routines aren't easy to build up because you need a new process, and that's what makes it really expensive. And it's a really huge management problem. One journalist can actually do a lot, but newspapers, usually our companies want to save money, and they have the muscles, and this is actually their own point. You know, they need to save money. In newspaper offices, there are usually no priorities. They rarely say that stuff should be left out, but you usually try to do the same as before with different people, with less people. And it's more like a stronger gray, basically, what's happening. And the media should have a clear statement what should happen in the future. It's not really sure where your course is going, and there's no guarantee. That's why you should have a debate in newspapers. With pretty easy questions. Where are we going? What should we do? What shouldn't we do? Who are we? And what do we want to be? And newspapers should rethink. It should be thought of as a project, as a community, as a production team for the truth. And you don't really have a guarantee for that. You don't know if it's successful. But if you're actually going down, you should actually fight, and you shouldn't just moan, but you should try to achieve something. The professionals of this can't really handle the new stuff, and that's for 15 years now. The new stuff is usually just difficult on your own in your own company, as is for other companies. If you look at congresses, for example, in Switzerland, and you visit them, then you can, there's just this row. In year 2000, the internet was irrelevant. In 2003, you were talking about the pros for newspapers. You can actually kill insects with it. Whatever you're doing with you can make it wet in the bathtub. And then there was a panic. Everyone is going to die, and we need a messiah. And the iPad will all save us. And then there was this saying, okay, we would die, but we didn't. So this debate is kind of irrelevant, and there's still cult panic now when it comes to advertisements, and most companies buy internet search machines
One of my favorite quotes from one of these publishing conferences is someone who said that the only possibility for us to renew the Swiss press would be to actually go into one of these conferences with a lot of dynamite. That would be a good possibility, but I think it's actually worth fighting on the different front as well, and fighting differently as well. I think it's worth rethinking journalism and fighting for journalism, because journalism is a specialty and has a specialty for complexity. So actually our product is reduced time and actually bringing things together
Dann, weil der
And
Journalismus
then
wichtig für die Demokratie
the journalism is also important for democracy. Important because because a lot of people have to talk. Many people have to talk about the same thing for a debate not to go for a debate to go anywhere. And then thirdly, because journalism is a really nice job. The great thing about journalism is that you can be wrong. So basically, whenever you go somewhere, it's never the way you expected it to be. The interview partners, the facts, nothing's ever the way you expected it to be. The same thing goes for writing. Writing is something completely unexpected. The best texts are being created in the middle of the night when you're completely tired already and can't think anymore. And these texts where you surprise yourself and having your name above these texts is completely fake because you have no idea who actually wrote this text. And in the end, these unexpected things is also the way the world works. Because as a journalism, you're actually next to the rhythm of the world. Because the actually new things within the world are unexpected, and those things are always the surprises. The fall of the Berlin Wall, the internet, the financial crisis, the Arab Spring. None of the experts has actually expected this. So the world is moving with jumps. And you could say that the world is moving with miracles. And miracles based on Hannah Arendt are are not the exception within the course of history, but the rule. So there are the nice miracles and the blue miracles, and we journalists are always on the side of the blue miracles. And even if these new things, the unexpected things, actually destroys us, our routines, the respect of others within our job, and we completely lose our compass, and we're basically on a boat without sails. But it's worth fighting within this storm anew, because these new things are not nice to us. This new world is not nice to us. But I think it's still worth rethinking this job and fighting for this job, because rethinking and reinventing journalism, that's the task of our generation. Yeah. Merci.